am I ever going to be able to move again? Am I ever going to be able to walk again? But most importantly, am I ever going to be independent again? Nightmares happened, you know, when you play and you get told all the time, oh, can you wiggle this, can you move that? And actually this time, for the first time, I couldn't.
He kind of went from a big rugby player, lots of attention, and then having all that stripped away.
He nearly died, and he knows that now. He said, if I'm going to get better, there's no point getting a bit better, I might as well get properly better. I need to make this into something which makes me go somewhere I wouldn't have gone if it hadn't happened.
Sometimes it's not until things get taken away that you realise how lucky you are to be able to do it in the first place.
Everybody likes purpose, you know, so you like to have something to aim for and do.
It was like, I want to climb mountains. I want to just keep climbing until I can't get any higher.
I just needed something to aim towards. Whether I was going to get up there or not was another thing.
He just says, why would I want to do something easy for me? That's not the point. I want to challenge myself. I want it to be really hard.
It was actually a good day when I dived in the pool. It was a bad day at the time, but because of what's transpired since and the opportunities that have come, not just for me, but for other people, that actually, yeah, I wouldn't change it.
Where to start, really? So Ed went to school in Bath until he was 13. He was playing rugby for the school and cricket and all sorts of sports because he loved all sport. But come 16, he had to decide, and there was a bit of a tussle between the cricket and rugby authorities. But I think Ed's heart had always been on the rugby field.
Ended up doing sort of county 15s, England under 16s, and then did the standard age group progress. And then Bath offered me an academy contract for when I left school. Obviously at that point I ditched all the schoolwork. Books went down to one side. I'm going to be a professional rugby player. Got my tracksuit and thought I'd made it. And that was it, basically sort of living the dream.
Ed was in the Bath Academy. I was in my first year of uni. We both had a couple of friends that were going out, Jack Cuthbert, who we played rugby with, and Stacey Francis, and they had a party at their house which was themed what you want to be when you grow up. So I went as a ballerina and he went as a fireman, and yeah, we got chatting that night, and then the rest is history.
And then, yeah, finished school, was in Bath Academy, but then I had sort of 2 or 3 recurring shoulder operations. Ended up leaving Bath then. They didn't renew my contract, and found myself signing for Doncaster at the age of 21. So you had this sort of public school posh boy from Bath on Milsom Street or Great Pulteney Street, and the next minute you're on Silver Street in Donny, and it's not just the blokes that can beat you up, but it's the women as well. So that was a bit of a culture shock.
So everything looked like he was potentially heading for a very good career in what was rapidly becoming a fairly well-remunerated professional sport. I personally wished he'd carried on playing soccer.
Then I was lucky enough and I signed for London Welsh. Great sort of team spirit, team ethos, great bunch of boys. Nutcase Lynn Jones was the director of rugby. All the stories you hear about him are true. He's a bit of a lunatic, but a genius coach and a great bloke, and he brought me on even further. And then, yeah, had a great couple of years at Wasps. Spent 2 years there, played 30-odd first team games, but I signed at the same time as a little kid called Nathan Hughes, who played in the same position as me, so actually had quite a lot of weekends off.
Poor old Nathan arrived and was injured for most of the first year he was there, so he didn't really make any impact, but then it became clear that there was going to be a lot of competition for the number 8 spot, which was Ed's favourite position.
And Lynn Jones got in contact with me. He was coaching Dragons at the time, and he said, look, do you want to come down, experience a sort of different pace of life, different league, play against different teams, and also, you know, play more regularly. You know, I was 26 at the time, so I went down to Newport. We lost most of our games, but I absolutely loved it. Loved being in Wales. It was back to another Donny situation where I was the posh English kid, but this time surrounded by Valleys boys who were brought up to hate posh English kids. So first 2 weeks was me practicing my Welsh accent, but after that, you know, you do your talking on the pitch, and the boys have become some of my best mates. 2 years there. I just signed another 2 years, but I had another shoulder injury, one of those reoccurring shoulder operations, actually my 4th one. And that took me up to April 2018, which is when I had my accident. Yeah, so we're off to physio now to see the neuro physios down in Shepton Mallet. It's about a half-an-hour drive. Try and see these guys a couple of times a week if possible. They just keep me on track with everything that's going on and make sure if and when things are returning and coming back and I'm still recovering, that they're sort of coming back in the right order and in the right way. April the 8th, 2017, and I had the weekend off from rugby because I was recovering from a shoulder operation. Came back here to see my parents. After lunch, went down. I just sort of took my t-shirt off, turned around, walked to the edge of the pool, jumped and dived in, and I thought it must have been 6 feet deep. I entered at quite a steep angle and turned out to only be about 3 feet deep. So, I was quite a lot heavier back then, sort of 115 kilos hit the bottom of the pool and all the weight went through my head and my neck. Straight away I knew I'd rarely ever hit my head that hard, despite having played 10 years of professional rugby. So I went to stand up to see if I was bleeding, and that's when I realised something was wrong. So I had a bit of movement in my right side. I had enough to sort of push off and get my head above the water, but I just sort of shouted help and then fell back into the water. My dad and one of my mates had seen what happened. They came over, so I'm there holding my breath, looking at the surface.
I didn't actually see him dive, but I saw him as his feet were going into the water. He didn't come up straight away, and I got to him and managed to turn him over onto his back, and he was struggling and saying, I can't move, I can't move.
Obviously that's really lucky because my dad's a doctor. He's a retired doctor. He knew straight away it was a head or neck injury.
I turned him on his back and I was supporting him, and I just told him to lie completely still. So we just floated him over to the steps and kept him floating on the water. So it was like he was on a spinal board. As long as we didn't move his head, then it wouldn't cause any further damage.
At that point, I had dislocated my C6 and C7 vertebrae, which is at the bottom of your neck here. The disc in between, and the impact had been so hard on the top of my head, the disc in between the two vertebrae had exploded. Shards of that disc had cut through the left-hand side of my cord. So, your spinal cord's usually 12 millimeters across. I've only got 4 millimeters left. So it sort of hits home how close it was. One bit of mishandling after that or movement could have been a very different story.
Something a lot of people don't realise is that a lot of people with permanent paralysis, it's caused by the people who try and help them when they've had an accident and they move them around.
They got me in the ambulance and I felt dizzy and tired, but okay, like actually no pain, quite peaceful. And I thought the journey to the hospital took about 15 minutes. I didn't find out until about a year later, because no one really wanted to tell me that journey took 2.5 hours because they had to pull over 3 times to resuscitate me.
One of the side effects of breaking your neck is it has a major impact on your cardiovascular system, and there's a very serious risk that your heart will stop in the hours immediately following a severe spinal cord injury. And his was trying very hard to stop. And there was actually a doctor in the ambulance shooting him full of adrenaline on numerous occasions just to keep him alive. He nearly died, and he knows that now.
And I don't remember any of that at the time, and it's kind of put a whole different spin on things, the way I look at it, because it shows how easy, I suppose, it is to die. I mean, I didn't have any life flashing before your eyes moments. I just sort of felt pretty relaxed and was going to go to sleep.
The really hard task that Sue had to do was Lois wasn't there. Lois was in Cardiff, and Sue got the job of letting Lois know that she needed to come over because Ed had had an accident without absolutely... We were terrified that she could panic and have a crash or something.
So I got the task of trying to tell her to come to A&E once he'd got into the ambulance, to meet us there without panicking her. Because I was thinking, oh crikey, you know, if she has an accident as well, it'd be all nightmare.
Kind of came out of the blue, and she said that Ed had an accident and that I just needed to get in the car and come to the hospital in Bath. And she was really good to me on the phone, actually. She stayed really calm and didn't panic me.
So we managed to do all of that bit, and I got to the RUH, and the ambulance had only just arrived, and we'd been gone for ages. And I since found out that he had several cardiac arrests in the ambulance going to the hospital. You see, I will get emotional, that's the trouble. So it's a good job I didn't know at that point, because it was scary enough.
I really didn't panic at that point. It wasn't until I got to the hospital when I bumped into his stepmum in the car park.
As we parked the car, we were walking, I was telling her what had happened. I was trying to play it down as much as possible, because obviously it's quite scary. You know, we'd been in such a panic about it, and it was so awful. And then obviously we saw him.
And I just remember thinking of watching all those like TV programmes, and he was literally like strapped to the bed with the red kind of helmet on to keep his neck straight. He was, this is what I admire about him really, he was just like making jokes when he was lying there, and obviously I could see like real panic in his eyes, but that's probably when I really started to like, yeah, break down a little bit.
And it was really difficult to try not to cry in front of Ed, because he's still conscious, and we're trying to be really upbeat, and he can't move. And
yeah, so I got taken straight to hospital, MRI scanned. They knew straight away I needed an emergency operation. 7-hour operation, neurosurgeon. Luckily I was near Southmead in Bristol, which is one of the leading neuro hospitals in the country. And an amazing surgeon, Mr. Brewer, was on call. He came in. 7-hour operation, microscope, picking bits of bone out of my spinal cord, realigning, tractioning my neck, realigning my vertebrae. And I remember him saying to me before I passed out, he was like, you need to understand that you might not get improved from this situation now. There is also a chance that you won't wake up. Now, luckily, being in sport and having, you know, gone through 6 operations before, you know that whenever you go on anaesthetic, they have to redo your rights, because there is that 1 in a million chance you're allergic to it or whatever. But this was the first time where I really sort of believed the surgeon when he was saying. I could tell he was genuine, but I think I was pretty sure I was still in shock, so I just said, oh, don't worry, just give it your best shot. And then the next thing I knew, I was under, and I woke up in intensive care in Southmead. First thing, I couldn't remember why I was there. I remember thinking, oh, I've had another shoulder operation, you know, you've waken up from anaesthetic, and I looked around and I was like, well, there's a few too many machines in here for that. And then it slowly started to dawn on me what had happened, the sort of nightmares happened, you know, when you play and you get told all the time, oh, can you wiggle this, can you move that? And actually this time, for the first time, I couldn't.
What was this school? Do you want to call it?
Salsa lessons.
Not too bad.
No, not if you've got leg on the floor.
So I first met Ed when he was admitted to the spinal unit in Salisbury, which is where I used to work. He was a few months down the line, so he'd just got out of bed and just started standing up and doing things like that in his previous hospital.
There's definitely hamstring happening now. Straightening out. As you're putting back there. Lovely.
He was in a wheelchair for most of the time, and it was, I suppose, a bit of an unclear picture. You can never really accurately say what somebody's going to achieve. But he was obviously very driven, very motivated. Even outside of physio sessions, he would be in the gym constantly, and Lois was there working with him and doing anything that we kind of recommended that he did, so that was great. He's really put in tons of work and tons of effort, and he's come a very long way. So quite different now from where he was when he was in Salisbury.
Okay. Not much has changed.
Hamstrings. Foot. Nice. Couple more. Foot. Hamstring. One more. Foot. Hamstrings. Good. I don't think I can give you much resistance there. So hamstrings on, and then try and lift off the bed. Whoa! Okay.
Whoa.
It's more than I expected.
Oh.
Oh.
it's really nice to get somebody very young in and who's really kind of motivated to work and put the effort in. And I think probably Ed's mindset has been a huge part of how far he's come. So I don't think he's stopped for 1 minute since he's had his injury. And he's doing so many amazing things, which is really great. So your muscles would usually you have a basic amount of muscle tone in your muscles, and if you've had some neurological injury, you can get too much tone or not enough tone.
So your tone stops you from just being a crumpled mass on
Yes.
the floor. You stood there because your muscles have got residual tone in them, yeah.
So it's too much. So the signals that say calm the muscle down are overactive, which means there's too much activity in the muscle and it's hard to move because your muscles are fighting against you, essentially.
And so it's hard. It's not just like trying to get things stronger. It's just trying to keep firing those neural pathways and sending the messages there to strengthen those messages. And then it's just time and waiting and hoping that they reconnect. Yeah. And there are no illusions that I'm never going to be normal again in what my normal was. But I'm still seeing changes, still improving. Probably going to be walking around like Quasimodo for quite a lot longer. But I'm hoping that one day I'll be rid of all my sort of supports and assistant things and maybe be able to walk into a room and you wouldn't be able to tell. If you asked me to go and chase something, you'd be able to tell, but I could walk into a room and you might not be able to know that I'd had a neural injury before. But that is years down the line if it ever gets to that point. But I'm already way further down the line than I ever thought I would be. So it's kind of just everything we get from now on is just a bonus.
One day I woke up in hospital about 3 weeks in, and I'd been keeping voice notes with Alexa, who became my best mate, 'cause when you can't move, Alexa's pretty useful. It's like it was designed for paralysed people. But I was keeping voice notes to just sort of record what I'd done during the day, just to offload. You listen to podcasts about offloading, writing things down in the evening. I woke up one day and one of the boys was reading all my voice notes, as you do, because it transcribes them into writing. And him and Lois eventually persuaded me to make some of it public, like put it on Instagram, on Facebook, and I wasn't really like that before. I had like 3 posts on my whole page in the previous few years, and I thought if it's going to help one person, just about spending a long time in hospital, because there's some weird bits about living for months in hospital, then it's worth doing. And I remember 3 days in after posting, one of my mates came in and go, "Wow, it's crazy what's going on social media." I was like, "What?" He was like, "Have you not looked what's happening to your posts?" I was like, "No." I looked on it and there's like 10,000 people following my Instagram page and Facebook page, and I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to keep this up now. Originally I started writing to help me, to offload from my brain, then I made it public to help other people. But actually by making it public, it helped me even more as well, because I was getting messages from people who had been through similar things, and I was speaking to them about bladder issues, sexual function stuff, and you're probably not getting told anything different than you would from doctors or nurses or even your family, but because it's coming from someone who's been through it, it seems to sink in and mean a lot more. And then there was other people saying, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm still paralysed in bed, but I'm saying, actually, today was really cool, this happened." And people were saying, "Oh, you've put my issues in perspective," some people, and then they were like, "Oh, that advice was really useful." And I started to feel like my situation was actually not just a negative one, it was having a positive impact, and that was incredibly empowering. And then I felt that sense of value by helping other people, and that was the first time I really had a taste for what that sort of altruistic attitude or the power of helping others, what it can do for you. Of course, people going through spinal cord injuries, I speak to a lot of people in hospital who have, just had a spinal cord injury, and you can start the conversation with them saying, "Oh my God, I want to kill myself, I can't live like this," which is how I felt on day 1 or 2. And you end it 20 minutes later with, "Thank you so much, I'm going to give this my best shot, I feel so much better." And that 20-minute conversation means more to me than anything I've ever done, in sport or life, and that's like a superpower for me.
So you're looking at like 25%, just in a couple of needles.
So I can get that with a thumb. I don't know if you can see that, but you'll get that little twitch response just from hitting a trigger point.
Harry's like renowned for being the best in rugby for this.
In the first few days, obviously, it was just trying to let things sink in. I was a bit in denial. And then on the 5th day, the surgeon came in on his ward round, and I'd been doing these tests, the American Spinal Injury Assessments, which are your standard tests. They test pinprick, sensation, movement, all the way across your body. They do it 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. And based on that, they make a prediction after 5 days of where you're going to end up. I was Asia Category A, which is showing as complete spinal cord injury. Basically, you won't make any recovery. And that was my presentation at the time after 5 days. So they came in and they said, look, Ed, you need to come to terms with the fact that you're not going to walk again. Hopefully you'll get the use of your arms back again so you can use a wheelchair. My mum burst into tears, and I just remember thinking, no, fuck that, that can't be the case. Like, not for me, but for what it'd do to my wife and my mum. That became my driving force then. It was kind of, I don't know if it was my competitive instinct kicking in. Every waking hour then, 8-9 hours a day, I'd wake up for an hour and just stare at my feet and try and wiggle my toes, and then I'd pass out from exhaustion. I'd wake up, do it over and over again, just all the time, just thinking about my family and my wife and not wanting to be a burden on them. And then all of a sudden, after 7 days, my toe flicked. And I remember thinking, was that a spasm? Because I'd have spasms and I'd move, and then I did it again and again. And then I was like, fucking hell, Mum, get in here. I was like, you need to come and see this. Is this actually happening, or am I imagining this? And that was that bit of hope that I had then to hold on to and graft towards and work with. And from then on, bit by bit, slowly but surely, hours of graft, loads of help from my friends and family, things started coming back. It was particularly tough on my mum, my family. I suppose the people that care for you the most. You know, it's difficult to see, because these injuries, these accidents don't just happen to you, they happen to everyone that cares for you as well. Lois was an absolute Spartan for me. Like, she gave up her job, she came and basically became my physio, because, you know, I couldn't get the hours of physio that I would have needed to make an optimum recovery, just because of the resources from the NHS. But Lois learned to be a physio. She would be in every physio session and she would give me those extra hours I needed.
At the time, we didn't really know how long he was going to be in hospital for, but I think after he came out of intensive care, we knew that it was going to be for a long time. We knew that our Cardiff house, it didn't have a toilet on the lower level, so it wasn't going to be ideal for a wheelchair. We were also really isolated over there, so we decided that we wanted to move back to Bath. I handed my notice in work. Once he was out of hospital, he had to 3 times a week go down to the physio at Hobbs, and so I used to drive him down there. And also, for both of our mentalities, we wanted to just spend as much time with each other as possible and go to the gym, and I could help him out with exercises. I wanted to be part of that rehab process, and I think he wanted me to be part of that as well.
It helps enormously that Lois has played netball at the highest level, and when Ed, wants to spend 8 hours a day rehabbing himself, that's not a problem. She understands, she gets it.
There were definitely times where I probably would have, I'm not sure, but I might have given up if I wasn't with her. I've got a lot to thank her for. I'm just glad that she can go back to her life, and she's not having to care for me. I'm completely independent. We do our own thing and we enjoy each other's company, and I'm in a situation now where, unless she wants to go for a run, there's nothing about my situation that is really stopping us from doing anything. So yeah, she's been pretty important.
Yeah, it was hard at the time, but I think like anything, it leads to bigger and better things.
Well, they're a hugely strong team, and at the time when the accident happened, their wedding was already planned for that year, i.e. in 3 months' time, and clearly that was impossible.
Yeah, so we were engaged the October before Ed had the accident, and when he had the accident, we decided to put the wedding on hold, so we booked it in for the following year in July. Obviously,
when it happened, we rang the venue eventually after like 3 or 4 weeks, and we're like, look, this isn't going to happen. Didn't really say what was going on. Really sorry, we're going to have to cancel.
At that point, we were just really unsure whether he was going to walk again and what this meant. We were also getting married in Italy and in Tuscany, which has got quite a lot of hills.
And then after about 3 months, I started standing in hospital. And I said, look, even if they prop me up at the altar, let's do this, like, let's get married. I don't want this to affect more of our lives than it already has done. So we thought we're obviously gonna have to find a new venue. So we rang the last venue just in case, and they'd actually found out what was going on and followed the story, and had kept the date saved for us just in case.
I think that was Ed's big motivation to get better. He wanted to get back to his old self. He was in the gym constantly, like completely obsessed with it.
Ed walked down the aisle, as it were, and
I was able to stand at the altar, but more than that, I was able to do my first dance, hobbling around in a circle. I actually ended up doing it in my swimming shorts because I was so hot. We got married in Italy, and I've got temperature control issues at the moment, so sweated through my about 3 suits before I ended up doing my first dance in a pair of swimming shorts, which Lois wasn't too impressed with.
The day was really emotional, I think, because of the journey that not just me and Ed had been on, but his whole family, all of our friends had been so supportive. It was kind of our way to say thank you to everybody. Ed absolutely nailed the speech, which was kind of all humour and tears and got the whole room crying. So
This cripple loves you more than you will ever know. And I am so proud to call you my wife.
yeah, it was a really good day, a hell of a party.
I think that cemented the fact that he wasn't going to let this thing change his life, and neither was Lois.
That was a huge motivating factor for me. It wasn't about me, it was about giving Lois the day she wanted. It hasn't been easy, there's been rocky patches, it's just been challenges that we've had to work through, and actually we come out the other side now closer than we went in the first place.
Unfortunately, with spinal injury, nobody can tell you accurately what the future holds and what you're going to be able to achieve, but I think he's got the majority of the elements there to keep improving, and I think because he's so determined to just keep working at it and keep challenging his body and doing, lots of great things, that hopefully his body will respond and he would see more improvements.
Go on, boy. It's alive.
Yeah, I think everyone in the family is quite driven. Everybody likes purpose, so you like to have something to aim for and do. I'm like that, Mark's like that, a lot of the family are like that. And I think that for him, he was already thinking about what he was going to do next.
About 6 months in, 7 months in, I said at the 12-month mark I want to climb Snowdon. Said that to the physios and the doctors, and they all thought I was mad.
He said, if I'm going to get better, there's no point in getting a bit better, I might as well get properly better. And I need to make this into something which makes me go somewhere I wouldn't have gone if it hadn't happened.
I just needed something to aim towards. Whether I was going to get up there or not was another thing. But things started to progress, and actually by setting that goal and that target, things started moving a lot quicker. Part of the reason for doing it was to kind of, I think, if I'm honest, initially, to stick 2 fingers up to the doctors and everyone told me I wasn't going to walk again. Not in a horrible way, just in, I wanted to prove them wrong. So I wanted to set an example for people. I opened it up through the blog to anyone who wanted to come along and join in. And I turned around on the start line thinking 2 or 3 people would be there, and there were 70 people there that I didn't know, which was pretty crazy. Amazing to sort of feel that support. And we had an amazing weekend. It took probably 9 hours to get up and down. One of the reasons for climbing Snowdon was to help. I wanted to pay back Restart Rugby all of the money that they had gifted me to support my physiotherapy after I left hospital, to give me the best chance to recover. They've been incredible. They came to me sort of 3 weeks in, really early on, and just to put my mind at ease, because at that time I was thinking, if I'm going to recover from this, it's going to cost a huge amount of money in private physio. Am I going to have to sell my house? Is Lois going to have to carry on working through this whole period, so we're not going to see each other? They came and said, look, when you leave hospital, we'll make sure you get the best possible care. So that was a huge weight off my mind early on, and it allowed me to just focus on getting better. It was to set an example for other people, to raise money for Restart, and to also, just get back outdoors and be happy again and set myself a challenge. And it was so addictive, and actually those benefits were great, but the biggest benefit for me was meeting so many people who were up there for a good reason, just up there to support someone and do something good, and whether they might have been trying to overcome their own issues or going through a transition in their own life, they were there to walk up a mountain with a load of like-minded people, and that was the most addictive thing about the whole process. So as soon as I finished Snowdon, obviously I was hooked, and I wanted to climb the next mountain. And it just so happened that Restart had their Alpine Challenge, which had been running for a year. This year they were climbing up Mont Bouet. So within 4 months of climbing Snowdon, I was attempting a mountain 3 times as high in the Alps. Mont Bouet is over 3,000 meters. Ended up achieving something that day. I walked for 12 hours straight, where before, obviously apart from Snowdon, I did 9 hours on Snowdon, but I walked for 12 hours, climbed 3 times as high as Snowdon, and I stood on the summit, and it all sort of hit me in one go, that I was stood in the middle of the Alps on top of a mountain, and I thought I was never going to be able to do that again.
Sorry, I just remember we got to walk back down.
It's very easy to take things like that for granted when you can do it, and you've always been able to do it, but it's just important to remember that that's not always the case for everyone else. And I'd spent a lot of time over the previous sort of 6 months with people who will never be able to do something like that.
Never take stuff like this for granted, because a lot of people can't do this. And just remember to focus on the things in your life and about your life that are positive, and things you've already got, not the stuff you haven't.
And I think it was them really that was in my mind that day, and how much it meant to me and how special it was for me to be outside, stood on a mountain like I'd always loved to do. I was doing it again, but I was very lucky to be doing it again, especially from what had transpired.
It's been an amazing, positive experience for me, and I hope everyone else can take something away from it as well. 100%. Love you guys.
And so now it rolls on. I had the opportunity to work with a charity called Neverest Orthopaedics. One of my mates, Charlie Davis, who's just retired from Northampton Saints, his dad is an orthopaedic surgeon who's been going over to Nepal to do relief work since the earthquake. And he said, do I want to help them raise awareness for a spinal unit they want to build over there? And I said, yeah, of course. Any excuse to get to Nepal and do some good work again. I'd already got the bug for sort of the charity work and trying to help. So went out there last October, just with the aim to trying to raise a bit of profile for it and raise a bit of money. I met all the people, saw how the locals, just saw how nice everyone was, and none of them expect anything from anyone, and they don't get any provision from the government. For a number of reasons, because it's such a poor country, but also because they don't have any sympathy for disabilities over there, because they're all Buddhist, which is really good, because it helps in one way that they think that this was always going to happen because it's fate. But in the other sense, they also think it's karma, so they think you've got a disability or something's happened to you because of something you've done in a previous life. So there's no sympathy for it, and a lot of them end up on the streets. I got back and I rang a few of my mates who had also recently retired from rugby. I said, let's try and raise all this money. How are we going to do it? So we came up with an idea with a series of fundraisers in the UK, but also I was going to continue climbing, not just for me, but to raise money for charity. So one thing led to another, and it's only been sort of 5 or 6 months. We started a company called Millimeters to Mountains. Ollie Barkley helped me set the whole thing up, and he's helping me run it, but there's also a board of ex-professional players, and our main aim is to raise this money for the spinal unit, but then to continue on and provide a platform that can help players get into stuff like charity work and might help them through their transition the same way it really helped me through my transition. And obviously the climbs we're doing, we've opened up for people to come and join us. We've got some really cool partners on board already, and we're trying to open those doors and help those boys through transition, as well as raise money for a good cause. We're going out to Nepal in October to climb Mira Peak, which is 6,500 meters, and to be able to open a spinal unit and look into sort of the eyes of people whose lives we would have genuinely changed would be incredible. Sometimes it's not until things get taken away, like your independence and just being able to walk from A to B, that you realise how lucky you are to be able to do it in the first place. So I'm really lucky that I've had that that shift and that change in my outlook on life, because now the smallest things make me happy. But I've also discovered a very big thing, which is the power to have a positive impact on other people and doing truly selfish things for other people, and how powerful that is for me. My wife Lois keeps reminding me that charity work doesn't pay the mortgage, which is fair enough, but it's something I'll never sacrifice. A lot of doors have opened and opportunities have come from this really bad thing. I've tried to approach this in a positive way and keep my head above water and keep moving forward. When opportunities have come, I've tried to take advantage of them. I can honestly say now that if I had the chance to go back and not dive in the pool, I wouldn't take it, because I feel like there's enough good for other people, especially the private conversations that I've had with people and the changes and hopefully a bit of positivity that I can spread. And I've also got to a point in my life where I am independent and happy that it was actually a good day. April the 8th when I dived in the pool, it wasn't a bad day. It was a bad day at the time, but because of what's transpired since and the opportunities that have come, not just for me, but for other people, that actually, yeah, I wouldn't change it.